Welcome to Community Crossfire, another point of view. I'm your host, Norman M. Oliver. As always, we have an incredible show. You know, before I came on, I was talking to my good friend Wayne Jefferson, and I'm so glad that Pastor D called him Toby. Because I told him I was going to have Cy Wolford on, talking about Black history. Hey, man, I don't want to hear about Black history. I was like, okay, turn Toby. So I got to beat him up. Oh, happy birthday to Wayne. Wayne said, make sure we say happy birthday to Gundy. And I wonder why you, Gundy, who is a good friend, did not invite us to Lavish. I never even heard of it. I never even heard of that place, Lavish. Hey, Gundy, I'm mad, man, but I'm still gonna say happy birthday to you. But on a side note, Sam Brown, a guy who I really admired and looked up to, passed away. Sam Brown, Miss Brown, I send my condolences out to you. He was a good Kappa man, and also a good friend. I remember making sure I always made the Sam Brown breakfasts that he helped establish to give out scholarship money through Kappa Alpha Psi. Before I go to my guest, Michelle Teller, who another person who I have a lot of respect for, who's doing a lot of good things at United Way, and Cy Wolford, I want to say a few things about what I think is going on. First of all, we've had a number of shootings again this evening. People were calling, telling me that, which is really sad, and that's why I continue to beat up on economic empowerment, economic development. As a matter of fact, next Sunday, I did a show with Mr. Jim Gilliam Sr., who's 93 years old, and this guy is incredible. He's an incredible person. You have to watch the show next Sunday. Also, there was an article in the paper about Chip Flowers, and I've been saying this for the last few weeks that what's going on right now is not only is the News Journal becoming a National Enquirer, we're playing petty politics while we have jobs being lost, crime is going up, our school system, I mean, some of our students are doing horrible. And there's so many issues that are facing our community. And we got the News Journal talking about bacon, coffee, and orange juice. I mean, really, I get it. And where did Tom Wagner, who woke him up? You know, it's that kind of stupid stuff that is hurting our community. I mean, it's really like, let's attack every politician. And I could certainly get into that, but I'd rather not. Because I can say what you can't say because I don't give a damn. Can you say damn on TV? I guess you probably can't, but I said it. Really, it is. It was like, Michelle, I look at all the good that you do, and somebody's worrying about your salary. You know, but did they really go and look at everybody at J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Wisfist? Did they look at these guys, how much money they're making? No, and they're nowhere in a community like you. So you don't have to say it, I say it, because I say what I want. And you know what? And I've been saying, let me tell you, last week, right? And after this, I'm going to go to you, because some things piss me off. I've said last week that some things are going on over William Hicks Anderson Community Center. And I mean it. And I got a number of phone calls. Mayor, I'm telling you, I know, first of all, the mayor can't do everything. His chief of staff, I think, is Madalewski. This guy got to get, he's a nice guy too. It's not like I'm beating up on anybody, but you got to get from out of your desk. Go over there and check out what's going on William Hicks Anderson. I'm not saying it's going to be another Foxtail, another explosion, but some stuff is happening over there. And once I got off the air, people call me. Most of the times when I go on TV, I'm usually right. Then they put it in the newspaper, then everybody read it. Everybody says, oh, well, I read that in the paper. There's some stuff happening at William Hicks Anderson, the only community center that's really run by the city. Did you know that? So I talk to people who I appreciate, like Karen Turner's and Dwight Davis. Oh, and people might say, oh, they said it. No, not just them. I'm just throwing their names out. And there's others. Ladies and gentlemen, and I'm telling the politicians, I'm telling the chief of staff, because the mayor can't do everything. Don't work the man to death. Go over and check out what's going on with William Hicks Anderson. There's a lot of shady stuff going on, and that's going to be the next explosion. And I'm going to talk about that more. How you doing, Michelle?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Welcome to the show. Michelle, tell me a little about, sorry, we'll talk to you in a minute. Michelle, tell me a little about what's going on with United Way and what's going on with you.
Well, you kind of brought up some of the real social issues, right, that are still confronting us as a community. So, we're really focused on how can we be that catalyst for social change around education, income, and health. And when you get deeper and look at some of the work that we're doing in the community, and I was talking about it a little earlier on the Congo Hour, is, we have Revive the Village focus of African American initiatives that's really trying to focus on saving our sons. You know, what can we do to empower, engage, and better connect with the African American community to bring them into camp so that we're really making a difference in the lives of youth and not just doing the same old, you know, because while there are a lot of great programs and partners that we're working with in the community, the reality is our community has a lot of issues still in front of us, right? And so if we're going to get something different, it's going to require us to do something different. And I don't think it's evolutionary, I think it's revolutionary, you know, and I'm not sure what that is exactly, but I do know together as a community we need to come together to figure it out. And one of the places we're starting with is that, you know, there's a wait list for African American males that have, you know, African American boys are on the wait list waiting for mentors. And so, you know, what we committed to with Big Brothers Big Sisters is said, you know, let's try to envision a year from now there's 0 African American boys on that wait list. What would it take to really to get more African American males to be mentors, not women mentoring young men? You know, that would be good. But we really want African American males mentoring African American males.
Well, that's great. I think that's really important. Let me. I know you got to run, but can I ask you like one or two quick questions? What about the fraternities and social organizations, and maybe even some of the churches? Are they embracing this? Because it seems to me that would be a great start.
Well, it's one of the places that we're starting right now, so we're reaching out to some of the fraternities. A lot of the sororities focus on young girls, and not that, you know, we're excluding our efforts and work on them, but right now the primary focus is on males. And so we're also reaching out to the faith community. I know there's a fatherhood coalition taking place next weekend, and so we're going to be sitting down and talking to them about how can we leverage that work in which you already have a camp of men, you know, wanting to make a difference.
Wow, I think that's great. I mean, like, and can I ask you another question besides that, or are you finished with that subject? Also, I think that you've done a great job in some of your initiatives, because I've never really been involved with United Way to the degree until you got there. Also, does it pain you, if I can ask you a different question, maybe some of our organizations, community centers, I mean, you've kind of watched them deteriorate and maybe not be as involved as they used to, or are they involved? Let's say, for example, like a People's Settlement, right? Are they still involved, or would you rather them be more involved?
So,
or is that like a curveball?
Yeah. So yeah, People's Settlement. So what I'm really generally, I would say as a community, there are, you know, there's always stronger organizations than others, right? I mean, People's Settlements, I think, is a whole different conversation. But I do think you have strong communities like Hilltop. I think you have like Neighborhood House. I think.
And the reason why I asked you that, not to cut you off, right, is because we have like because when I worked there, Mr. Boswell had me work with some of the African American males in that neighborhood, and I know that you tried to do some things. And I just wanted to clear that up also.
Oh, with People's Settlement.
I mean, and I use that as an example, probably a bad example, but you understand my point. If we have strong infrastructure like that, it'll work out better.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it has to happen at the grassroots level.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, I think the neighborhood centers, the Boys and Girls Clubs are critical resource to the community. You know, our youth need a positive place to be able to go in order to sell, you know, assets and to be able to better connect and to the community. I think that's part of the problem, is that, you know, where do our youth go? I mean, with limited resources, you know, centers are closing earlier, they're not open on weekends. A lot of programs maybe don't even service teens anymore. You know, they service them up to a certain age, and then when they start getting in high school, when they probably could use more structured programs most, right? Because those are the years when peer pressure and you tend to do more risky behaviors, maybe the infrastructure isn't as tight as it could or should be.
Michelle, can I get you back to come for another? I'm going to need you on for an hour show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because actually, I mean, people really need to get to know this young lady. She really does an excellent job on a lot of stuff. So thank you for giving Community Crossfire like 10 minutes or 5 minutes of your time.
Nope. Have me back.
Thank you, boss. Hey, look, also, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Michelle. This year, the turkey drive is going to be different. We're working strictly with the seniors, and we're going to all the high rises. No, there's no use of you calling my office, because we're going back to the roots. And also, speaking about William Hicks Anderson Center. And I know William Hicks Anderson is probably turned over in his grave with some stuff going on there. I also talked to Sean Allen. Sean Allen did call me, and we did speak about this. So don't think that I run from any issue. Hey, Si, how you doing, buddy?
Good to be here. Thank you for having me back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I bring Mr. Wolford on every once in a while, he sends me emails, and he talks about stuff that really is fascinating to me. I know sometimes people like Toby don't want to hear about his history, but it is right, And in fact, even if you were telling me about the Lewis family, right?
Sure.
The Lewis family from Newark. Right. And the first person came to my mind was Gator Lewis. Mr. Gator Lewis, as most of you know, who was the coach at Howard High School and had an incredible impact on all of our lives. And a lot of times I don't want to just do shows like this, but when you send me this stuff, because first of all, this guy's a historian and he finds stuff. Geologist? That what you would call?
Genealogy.
Genealogy. Uh-huh. Sure. So what exactly is a genealogist?
Genealogy is using tools such as census information, birth certificates, death certificates, tax records, in order to determine your family history. Okay, it's not called a science because there are all kinds of different things which are not reliable sources. Sometimes you're looking at the news journal to find your information, but you're looking at maybe 100-year-old newspapers. You're looking at again, anything which could occur, which is a record of where your ancestors were or what happened. And
before you go there, right?
Sure.
I wanted to thank you for finding some stuff in my family.
Sure.
Like when you found, I never knew when my brothers Lonzo and Norman, and
sure.
you were going way back
sure.
and finding some people in my family. I think you went to the 1800s. Right. And this guy is excellent with this. So you went to the Lewis family. What exactly that's what you want to talk about now?
We're back to 1840.
Okay.
And again, no one has a memory of what happened in 1840. So you need some records. You need some birth certificates, death certificates, or whatever to tell us what was going on. The Lewis family was a very, very rich family in Newark. They actually owned all of downtown Newark. The University of Delaware Old College, they sold the land to them. Okay, Newark High School, they owned the land. We're talking about gigantic plots of land that they owned. They were also slave owners. Okay, and so I
always knew it was something about Newark. I always knew it was something about Newark. The University of Delaware, Newark High School. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
Well, I hope your buddy hasn't changed the channel, because
right.
If you don't want to hear about slaves and who owned you and how they sold you and how you ran away and all those
I'll be deporting tomorrow. Don't worry about
kinds of things. This is the subject we're talking about. And this is the subject we have to know. And you mentioned, Lewis and Gator Lewis. Our name, we don't have African names. Okay, Oliver's not an African name. Kunta Kute is an African name. Wolford is not an African name. And we have to know where these names came from. We have to know where the Lewis name came from, and we have to know where the Oliver name came from. The Wolford.
What made you pick the Lewis family?
I was doing my research, okay, and I needed some sales right off of the slave auction, okay? And I said, who has some records of downtown? Slave auctions were in downtown Wilmington. White folks used to go down there, and they used to look at slaves standing on a rack, and they used to say, I'll pay $500 for him, and they used to take him home. So I was looking for a family who was buying slaves off the rack, just like you buy a car, okay? The Lewis family, again, was from that generation. Surprisingly, it was a hit, as they say. The Lewis family papers were all turned over to the University of Delaware, and they turned everything over, and they had a complete record of the family records. And because they were slave owners, just like you have records of your car, changed the oil, got new tires, got new brakes. They said bought a slave, sold a slave, slave ran away, want a reward in the newspaper ad of reward, $5 reward if you find Joe, and all of this is part of their papers. So what I have done is taken those papers, put them in a PowerPoint presentation, and you can go through this PowerPoint presentation and just see who they were, and again how we fit in. Catherine Ann Lum Lewis, okay, was the wife of Albert Lewis. And Lum, and we're throwing names around.
Right.
Lum is Lum's Pond. And almost literally, these folks owned all the land from Lum's Pond, and you know where Lum's Pond is, to downtown Newark. We're talking.
And by the way, I know some Lums.
Very good. You're
No,
right.
seriously.
These are Newark names. These are northern Delaware names. Okay.
Okay, good.
So, and again, this is why this history of this research is.
This
so,
is 1808, 1837. So.
That's when they lived and died. Okay, so we are back 170, 180 years, and again, folks say, why are we going back that far? This is our history.
Okay.
We were here before most of the Europeans were here. We were here before the Italians were here, and the Irish were here, and those here.
And all these people were in Newark. They owned Newark.
They own Newark. And again, there were no trucks or any equipment or whatever, and slave labor was the labor pool.
I would never look at Lum's Pond again. I would look at it totally different when I go there fishing. Hey, go ahead.
There have been books written of the history of Newark, and this is one of them. It's called Images of American Series, and it talks about the history of Newark. And in that book, it talks about the Lewis family, and it says the Lewis family owned the land where the University of Delaware now sits. And in addition to that also, they said the Lewis family owned slaves, indentured servants, and apprentices. Now, if you were reading the book or writing the book, you would say, well, who did you own? Tell me who you owned. Tell me the names of the folks you owned. Okay, are they any of my ancestors?
And they actually put this in writing.
It's all there, okay?
This is interesting.
Oh, it's incredibly interesting. So, but this particular historian didn't write the names of the folks who were the slaves in the book. However, they are in the private records at the University of Delaware. So if you go to the private records of the University of Delaware, you can find them. I, again, added to the records the census information. And you look at the census information, and it really doesn't make sense to you. Say, these are rich, 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 rich white folks. Right. And living with them are 2, 4, 6, 7, or 8 black folks, all living in the same household. Now,
you got names like Lewis, Ivory, Chiba, Carey, Ivory, Comegys.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're looking at this, and you're trying to find out what's going on here. Are they all the same family? Well, they all don't have the same name, Lewis. So they're not all Lewises, and the black folks and the white folks are not Lewises. And so you're trying to find out what's going on here, and you say, well, it's 1850. This is before the Civil War. Slavery still exists in Delaware. But as they tell us, when they tell us the history of Delaware, they say, oh, Newcastle County never had any slaves. It was all below the canal.
Right, right.
So we're looking at this census, and we're saying, well, those folks must be free. But the Lewises did us a favor. Okay, they kept the paperwork. There are different shades of gray of free. You were a slave, which was a lifetime commitment. You couldn't get out of it unless you died. And then there was indentured servitude, which you merely had to spend 20 years of bonding to a master, and this is the terminology that they use. And apprenticeship was the same way.
So this is in Newcastle County and in Newark?
This is in Newark, Newcastle County. And all over the state, and basically in.
But you're right, because you when you think about it, you think Kent and Sussex County.
You think
you never think of Newcastle or Wilmington.
We've been trained that way. And again, if you were asking about the Lewises would say, well, we never owned any slaves. Slaves? What do you mean by you didn't own any slaves? We didn't own any lifetime, life to death black people. We let them out of slavery in 20 or 30 years, so they were free. To me and to you, 20 or 30.
You know, it's funny. And then again, I got beat up on my friend. His last name is Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. We got Thomas Jefferson. But you can keep on moving on. Go ahead.
Okay.
This is good stuff.
So they have the paperwork showing you of the indentured servant agreement, which existed for these folks to be in the family or the property of or bonded to, is the terminology, to the Lewis family.
Wow.
They decided one day to sell one of them. Okay, and now we're into serious stuff. We say, I mean, you just decided to sell a 4-year-old girl, and again, we're talking babies here. Okay, the Lewises decided to sell Her name is Susan Comegys, to a family member, the Lum family, okay? So what they did was they drew up a...
It's deep, ain't it?
They drew up a bill of sale, and it says bill of sale. That's what it says.
And so this is actual a bill of sale.
This is the handwriting. This is their handwriting. This is the cover of the paperwork, and it says this is a bill of sale.
And who's A.M. Marshall?
What actually happened is, and again, we're going to get into, again, the history of male and female relationships. It used to be that women couldn't own property, okay, and that only men could own property.
Right.
But if you were a part of the Lum family, and your family owned Lum's Pond and everything else, the women kept their property rights.
Right.
So Catherine Lum actually died before this transaction took place.
Right.
These slaves were hers, and so she left them to the kids before she died.
Wow.
So that's why her name is on these papers in addition to her husband. So as we get into the papers, it will say Catherine Lum, her husband is Albert Lum, and it'll go through the kids who she gave the slaves to.
Wow.
We go on, and this is, again, the handwritten document. And it is just like you sell your car. When you sell your car, you say, hey, don't bring it back.
So it was Susan Comegys. Where did Ivory come from?
This, again, is a married name. We again,
I got you. Okay.
get into trying to make
Just
sure
want
we
you to know
know.
I'm paying attention.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
again, you're going to say, hey, I know
It's deep though, right?
I know some Comegeses and I know some Ivories.
Which I do.
Very good.
Go ahead.
And this is the bill of sale. It says, no to all men, that these presents, it's a legal agreement that Albert Lewis, who's and his partner, who is deceased, Catherine Lum, okay, and other family members are selling for $200, okay, Susan Comegys Ivory. That's what they're doing.
State of Delaware.
State of Delaware. They are selling her. This is the way it reads. It is a legal agreement. And it says that she will be, as they sell her, because she's not a slave, they're going to set her free when she gets to be 25 years old.
Wow.
So she was a slave, or she was owned by the Lewises from the time she was 4 years old. So she only has to work for 21 years in order to be set free.
Wow.
And so we're going through here and we're defining terms. And this is painful. I'm sure you're the guy who said, I don't want to know about African American history, has already changed
Yeah, his
the
last name is Jefferson.
Jefferson has already changed the TV and
Yeah, I
say,
know. He's already in chains.
I don't want to hear about
He's already bonded.
I,
He's in bondage.
I don't want to hear about my folks being sold.
No, I
But
know.
this is our history.
It's deep.
And we can't ignore it. Okay? And
So now you start moving up.
well, now we are looking again at census information, and we're going to look at the Lums. This is the Lum family, and we see the same family structure. And again, it's tough for us to comprehend.
So then you get Dixons.
Absolutely.
And I know some Dixons.
Sure.
Taylor.
Absolutely. And we don't have the paperwork, personal paperwork of those folks. So when we look at this, we say, hey, they must be free. But the Lums,
Williams. I mean, that's a common name.
the Lums have these indentured servant agreement and apprentice agreement against all these folks. But
Wow.
we don't have the paperwork, and we can't find out what was going on.
How were you able to get this information? I mean, it took a
the-
long time, a lot of studying, a lot of research.
I was looking for this. I got to the point in my research. The questions that we should be asking ourselves is, where did our name come from?
Right.
And when did our folks get out of slavery?
Right.
Okay? And in order to do that, you have to know, what's the paper trail? What is the paper trail? I was looking for someone who had turned over their personal files.
Let me ask you a question. Was Alex Haley like one of the first people to start bringing this kind of stuff to light? You know?
Alex Haley actually brought it to the public's attention.
Okay.
Okay? Because, as you just said, this is a lot of work.
It is.
And you have to know what you're looking for. I mean,
And you know what? If I could stop, I mean, I don't know if I'll pay you a couple of dollars. I would tell folks, right, Ancestry, all jokes aside, that you should try to contact Mr. Wolford. He does incredible work, and he'll find out stuff, and you'll be in awe. You will really be in awe when he start going on that, because he went back to like the 1800s on us. on my family, and I've really saved it. I showed my sisters and brothers, and it's some incredible work. Can people call you and?
Sure. Well, we now have a African American History and Genealogical Society, which folks can come to, and there's a.
And you got a presentation coming up.
I have a presentation coming up. There's a Delaware Genealogical Society, which again can get this type of information. Again, the issue is that we really have to have a black organization because most of the Europeans came over from Ellis Island. I'm sure you've heard the story of Ellis Island. We were over here hundreds of years before Ellis.
I know I keep cutting you off because you got so much information. I want you to go through as much as you can because I'm sure people want to call.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Well, again, I'm trying to show you the paper trail.
I got you.
Because again, the issue is I can come in here, as you said, I can tell you anything. But I want to show you the paper trail to show you how I figured this out. So that again, when we get to your family and when we've traced your family back to Augusta, Georgia.
I don't want to know.
when we trace the folks back to Augusta, Georgia, I can go, Norman, we can go further.
No, I don't want to go too far. I got cousins to be coming out the woodwork asking for a couple dollars.
Tell me about it. And so now we're looking at Mary Lumb and we see Susan Comegys. We have just seen the sale of a 4-year-old girl, and now in 1860 she is 14 years old. We've just seen a person sold. And this is the paper trail which shows you how they are sold. We now come with apprenticeship agreement. And again, they didn't spell the way I'm not a speller, and I'm sure you're not a speller, but some of these names kind of, you said anything. This word is Chippa, but we know Chippy Chapel, and frequently these names get misspelled. So this could be, in terms of Chippa, could be the Chippy family.
Or it could be a Trippy Congo.
But again, we're trying to find out the source. This is an apprenticeship agreement.
Wow.
An apprenticeship agreement, and this is from his mother.
$40.
$40. Again, the issue was there were no schools, was no training to be done, so parents who were trying to get their kids some education or some skills or whatever would apprentice them out to, in this case, a farmer. This is an apprenticeship agreement for $40, a handwritten note, where his mother actually said, take my son, teach him to be a farmer, okay? And so this is the note for $40. He actually gave her $20 and was going to give $20 to the kid. And this sets up an apprentice agreement for like 12 years for this guy. He ran away. I mean, this is an incredible story. You say not only we end up in drama.
But you know, when you start reading this stuff, I'm sorry, I mean, it's like become fascinating, right? I mean,
sure.
You start reading, you start digging, you're like, wow, this is some deep stuff.
Sure. It is some deep stuff, and it's not being given to us. There's a movie out now called... There's a movie out now called 12 Years a Slave. Do you realize the main movie out right now is a movie called Gravity? It's on 3,200 movie screens. 12 Years a Slave is on 19. They don't even want to tell us the story.
So in that movie, the guy, he was free, and then somehow he became a slave, right?
He was free, he was educated, he was a violin player.
And they said that's a true story.
He made some white people upset, and they put him in
similar to you.
Probably when someone sees this, I'll be getting phone calls.
Okay, great. I want to stop you. I keep stopping.
Well, they again, it's the same story. They put him on a ship, set him south, and basically beat him into slavery. Okay, here he ran away. So Albert Lewis put out a arrest warrant for him, and it says $10 for Chippa if you return him. And you know, just like your car.
That's July 30th.
Absolutely. And you know, these again are letters where he's after his mom was the one that put him in the apprenticeship agreement. He sent a letter to his mom's boss and said, ask her if she's seen her son. I know she's seen her son. If he ran away, I know he got in contact with her. These are very personal records, very personal correspondence. This guy's trying to get Chippa back. It's his money. And again, it is painful to us because we would say, keep running, Chippa. Right. Okay, but this guy is losing money. There's another apprenticeship agreement, and this is a state apprenticeship agreement. What state apprenticeship agreement means, that is, because black folks were poor and they didn't have orphanages, they would take the kids away from the parents and they would apprentice them to rich families. So this guy by the name of John Thomas Kerr, at a very young age, 4 or 5 years old, was again apprenticed to Albert Lewis for 20 years. Okay, and this is 20 years of free labor. I mean, this is when we're using terms like indentured servitude and apprenticeship. What that means is you go out and slop the hogs, you feed the chickens, and they're supposed to educate you, but in this case, they didn't educate anybody. But this, again, is a legal agreement, and it's an agreement between the trustees of the poor.
And that's right here, right in Newcastle County.
We're right here in Newark. We're right here in Newcastle County.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't this isn't Mississippi, this isn't Alabama. This is the way they handled it, pre-Civil War. But again, we're back to our folks went back pre-Civil War. Okay?
So at some point, right, that land was sold to University of Delaware.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And that's probably how the college got started.
Sure. Absolutely. That's where they got the land from.
Wow.
But they were farmers. Again, the reason why this comes up is they were farmers. They needed somebody to work the farm. And because they didn't call anybody slaves, they ended up getting kids from the orphanages. They end up having their mothers put them in the apprenticeship programs.
You ever thought about writing a book? No, seriously. I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
I have, but I'm not sure I have the time. And this is a legal agreement which bonds them to the Albert Lewis. He ran away. Everybody keeps running away. Okay, and this is a note that Albert Lewis made to himself. He says, "If you find John Thomas Kerr, sell him." Okay, I don't want him back. Sell him.
Wow.
Drama. Much drama. I don't. He ran away. Let him stay away. If you find him, sell him and give me the money. Okay. This is the most incredible letter you will ever see in your life, I guarantee you. John Thomas Kerr got to Buffalo, New York. It was cold in Buffalo, New York. This letter was written in July, but it's cold in Buffalo in July. And he found the guy on the street corner because Albert Lewis didn't teach him to read or write. And he said, "Send a letter back to my master. Tell him that I'm on hard times. And if he takes me back, I will come back."
No, the camera people were like, "Oh, this is me. Go ahead, finish. I don't want to stop you."
Well, I mean, can you imagine being in a condition where you say, I ran away from slavery, I ran away from, all the abuse I was taking, but now I'm living on the street, don't have a job, don't have any food, and I'm willing to go back and be satisfied. This letter says, if you take me back, I will be satisfied.
Wow.
This is where we came from. These are the hardships, our folks, and this is the...
it's weird, in a crazy kind of way, some of the mentalities even to today.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Well,
some folks just rather go back to jail.
Sure.
I don't mean that in a sarcastic and mean-spirited way.
Sure.
But they'd rather be just home. They'd rather just be in
It's a Jesse Jackson quote. Jesse Jackson always said jail to some folks is a step up. Okay? Slavery to this guy, or indentured servitude, or whatever he was doing, was a step up from sleeping on the streets in Buffalo.
Wow.
And this is, where we came from, and this is what our ancestors had to go through. Again, we were saying, hey, once we were free from slavery, everything was okay. Challenges never end. Okay? Anne Ivory. Now, we never had birth certificates or death certificates, but this is an indenture agreement. As she was born, okay, the Albert Lewis wrote this note, and it says Elizabeth Ivory is bonded for 28 years. They bonded her services to Albert Lewis for 28 years on the day she was born.
Wow.
Okay? And all the family has to do is provide her with food and a pair of shoes and a dress once a year, and that's the way we were living. She ran away. These folks keep running away. Okay? And he again kept the records of them running away. These again are back to this census. Susan Comegys, we said he sold. We know what happened to her. These folks all ran away. We don't know what happened to David Ivory, but now we begin to question some things. We begin to question his relationship. His wife had died. We begin to question his relationship with Elizabeth Ivory and the other Elizabeth Ivory, because there's no woman in the household.
So he started having affairs with some of the...
Well, this is where it's a little bit of speculation, but we see this is what the census looks like in 1850. But when we get to 1860, Elizabeth Ivory, the baby, became an M, a mulatto. She became brown skin rather than black.
All of a sudden?
All of a sudden. And you and I, we again have a tough time figuring out where these 4 one-year-old and 5-year-old babies came from, and that one we can't figure out how she went from being black to brown.
That's deep.
Okay, but again, we know that the African American race has been bastardized, if we may use, if that's a correct word also, to the extent of 60%, 70%. We are mixed race, okay? And we wonder how it happened. Well, we can point the finger at Albert Lewis and say, probably that one little girl, belongs to you. And we begin to, again, see her over the years. That was 1850, and then she's still in the household in 1860. And
You got Academy Street?
He's on Academy Street. He's right there in downtown Newark. That's where he lived.
Wow.
Okay.
You know where Academy Street is, right? I'm right in Newark, right on Academy Street in Newark. That's pretty much like right University of Delaware, Academy Street.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
20 years later, this little girl, Elizabeth Ivory, has gotten married but is still living in the same household with Albert Lewis.
And now this guy's 72 years old.
He's now 72 years old. And again, the Civil War is going on. This is 1850. She was 1 year old. Civil War went on. This is now 10 years after the Civil War, 5 years after the Civil War. She's still living with this guy. So somehow you say she had to be his. She ended up moving to New London Avenue. Now we're connecting the New London, the African community of.
I think Mr. Pritchard lives around New London Avenue. Mr. Pritchard, I think Dr. Freeman Williams, all those guys live around that way.
Very good.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And
so now you get up to 1900s.
We're up to 1900s, and again we're trying to make in genealogy, in your own particular family genealogy, you're trying to trace yourself backwards. We came the other way. We came from 1850 forward. So we're trying to make.
Now you got Roberts and you got Smiths.
Right. Sure. And we also are on New London Avenue. We know where we are. We are home. Okay.
It gets deep. It gets scary. People probably watching like, oh my goodness, my name is going to pop.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to pop up here. Like, yeah, it's you.
Sure. But this is the connection we're trying to make.
Because 1900s, you're getting close.
We're getting close. The last census that we have is 1940, so I'm not sure I took us any further. I looked at Albert Lewis again. He became an older man, and he started living with his kids, so he got rid of all the slaves and got rid of all the black folks and got rid of all the babies that we think he.
See, White Clay Creek, all that, yeah.
Sure. White Clay Creek is downtown Newark.
Yeah.
One side of Newark is Pencader, and the other is White Clay Creek. The downtown section is White Clay Creek. I've shown you like 10% of the Albert Lewis papers. He owned more folks. More of them ran away. But again, why we're going through this exercise and why it's so important is these are our ancestors. Love it or not, this is the way you find out our genealogy. Even the camera person, if I may say so.
And and once you get, and the reason, and you could open up the phone lines if you want. You can put the phone number up because somebody may want to ask you a question about how can they find some of their ancestors and folks like that. And I got to tell you, I kind of laugh and joke, but it was kind of frightening when he was going into our history and finding folks, and then you start connecting names and you see where people came from.
Sure.
And I know Kenyon Camper and those guys. Kenyon gets into history, and you get more into
history and genealogy. Again, Wolford.
Is this on? I don't know if this phone is on.
I had never met another Wolford in my life, and found out there is a.
Yeah, this phone is not on.
There is a Wolford, Maryland, which is south of Cambridge, Maryland. And Roger Wolford came over in 1662 and did several land grants over in Somerset County and Dorchester County. And that's where my name comes from. My name comes from Roger Wolford.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, we don't think like this, but we have to change and say, I should know where my name came from. I mean,
but when you start, I mean, for me, right? I mean, I'm listening to you, and I would think that the more research I start getting into, I would start getting like, wow. I mean, you start uncovering stuff.
Sure.
And you've been around long enough
that
you know what you know.
Sure.
So you get kind of deep. Is this phone? It's not working? What can you fix? Can you get it working? Because I know people probably trying to call in. Good, I'm sorry.
Sure.
But so once you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper, what happens?
Well, you just come up with these amazing stories. I did some research on another lady whose name was Burroughs, and I traced her down to Charleston, South Carolina, and found out that the main street in Charleston, South Carolina is Burroughs Street. And you say, well, why is the street named Burroughs Street? Well, it's named after the Burroughs family, and the Burroughs family were cotton merchants. 60% of the exports from the United States were cotton pre-Civil War. The Burroughs, the white Burroughs, okay, owned.
Good, she's trying to get the phone up. You got it? Good, good. I'm listening to you. Go ahead,
the white Burroughs, again, obviously owned slaves, but they were slave merchants, and they were buying the cotton from the farmers and shipping it overseas. Forget about the money you think the DuPonts have or the Rockefellers or whatever. These guys were shipping 60% of the exports from the country out of the country and taking a cut out of it. I mean, how much do you think these guys were worth? Just an incredible figure. And this is, we don't think about it. We don't, again, Burroughs, you know.
Because we start thinking that history start with the Black Panther movement.
You're right.
Malcolm X said Dr. King or some of the sit-ins and
this
things of that nature.
This again is 19th century history, which is from 1800 to 1900, and it's a whole different set of heroes that we have to deal with. Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass was an incredible, important figure, but we have to go back and find out why he was that important figure. And the reason why, as I've done my research, is because he was the only guy who had a newspaper. He had the newspaper. He was the voice of the black community. And so whenever they...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Whenever they wanted an opinion of what black people thought, they went to Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass used to reprint the articles from other newspapers which were relevant to the black community.
But when you start thinking about guys like Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carver, Carver G. Woodson, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, and even those guys were incredible in their own right.
Oh, sure. Obviously, we have gone through transition periods, and we have to know, who our heroes were during their transition periods and what they were fighting for. As you just started off the conversation, we're talking about jobs. These folks were talking about the right to vote. They said, if we can't get the right to vote, we ain't getting nothing. If we can't own land. And there were 3 times in the history of Delaware where they were trying to ban black folks from buying land.
But the last time you were on here, right? So you going back to the Lewis family and the Lum family and things of that nature. But at one point, how did all the blacks, they end up owning a lot of land in Newark also? Because I remember our conversation on that. Where did that transpire? How did that transpire?
Well, again, it took place in several phases. If you had money, and my folks came over in 1810 from Maryland. If you had money, you could buy land. I did the research on Iron Hill, and the folks in Iron Hill came to Iron Hill because of the Whitaker Iron Company. The Iron Hill is called Iron Hill because of the iron deposit. And it was very strenuous work in order to, they basically had to melt down the mountain, put it into blocks and put it on carts and take it out of there. It was very labor intensive work. And so they brought in free blacks to work at the iron mine. And the Iron Hill community got started through iron mining
So at some point it transferred, and a lot of some blacks started owning land. Then they lost it back.
Well, in Iron Hill specifically, the Whitaker Iron Company put up some funds for 3 black guys to buy 50 acres of land over in Iron Hill, and that's how the Iron Hill community got started. The New London Avenue community, we think, is associated with these rich families of Newark. The Lewises being one, the Cooches being another one, the Boldens being other families.
Like it's Stephanie Bolden.
You keep saying that.
Stephanie Bolden, I think that we have some slave stuff going on here with you.
But this is where the names come from. And again, it's part of our history, and we should know it. And you know, it can be found. You know, it's tough to find, but you can go out and find it.
It's too bad that the phones messed up tonight. I don't know what it was, because I'm sure we probably got like 10,000 calls coming. There's something there. We got a little something. But good. I'm listening to you, Si. Because this is a very good conversation.
Again, because I knew that, you know, in Wolford, Maryland, there were a lot of both free blacks and slaves that, and it was around the Harriet Tubman era, that Harriet Tubman might have helped my folks escape from slavery. And I found out that on one of Harriet Tubman's trips on the Underground Railroad that she freed some Wolfords. And again, an incredible story. A story is called the Dover Eight, where Harriet Tubman had freed 8 folks, 2 of them with the last name Wolford, and they got to Dover. And instead of the conductor sending them on their way, he turned them over to the sheriff to collect $3,000.
And it's called the Dover Eight?
Dover Eight is the story.
Where would you find that at?
You can just Google the Dover Eight. Again, the city of Dover's got more involved in promoting the story. So as we have Thomas Garrett here, the story of the Dover Eight will become better known as Dover's contribution to the Underground Railroad and freedom seekers.
That's cool. So when are you going to, if a person needs to get in contact with you, how would they do it?
They can send an email to me. I can give you an email address.
Go ahead.
SYL.
What are you looking at?
SYLWLF@AOL.com. And I can keep you informed of when the Delaware Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society meetings are, or where I'll be lecturing, or how you can get some assistance in doing your genealogy.
And I think the phone is finally working. Oh, we do have a phone. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Norm. Great show tonight. How you doing, Mr. Wolford?
How you doing?
How you doing, Mike?
All right. Hey, listen, I ran into Mr. Wolford at a genealogy workshop, and I'm just so impressed with what he's doing, and it's so important to us because we need experts in this field to consult with, you know?
Yeah. And Mike, I mean, and you know, like I tell people, I mean, every once in a while, like Si to come on because he does give out incredible information. Because he emails me and I read this stuff, I'm like, I can't have him on every week, but I would love to have him on every week.
You could.
And so do I. Thanks, buddy. How you doing? The phones are working now. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Norman, I'd like to ask the gentleman, is there a website that you can go to outside of Ancestry.com to get information?
There's another website called Family Search, which is free. And I think free is the operative word.
Family Search?
Family Search. It's www.familysearch.com or familysearch.org it actually is. And it does the same thing as Ancestry.com does, and you don't have to pay a monthly fee to get it.
Okay, thank you.
That's good information, yeah. So because a lot of people want to start learning about, you know.
You can actually go to any public library also and get access to Ancestry.com or get access to Family Search or whatever and get some assistance on genealogy.
What made you, I mean, because I know you were at AAA or whatever. What made you want to get into this?
What happened is the city of Newark did 250 years to the city of Newark. And I paid $75 for the book, and my family wasn't in it. And I think it was the $75 that motivated me to say, hey, these folks just wrote 250. There were no black school teachers in it. None of my family was in it. And they left.
And the blacks have a rich history in Newark.
Absolutely. Sure. Again, my family's back 200 years, and there are other families even more. The James family goes back even more than 200 years in the city of Newark. and it all wasn't there. And so I said, it's my job. You know,
Let me take 2 or 3 calls because because the phones just start working. So I'm sure people. How much time we got? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Norm. You got a great big lot of history of your own.
Yeah.
Clem House.
Yeah.
Bear House.
And he was able to find all that. When I asked Sil to look that up, all that kind of stuff came up. It was incredible.
Yes. I got part of your family history because of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War.
Wow. Maybe you call my office. I'd like to sit down and talk to you about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right.
And also, don't forget, Keith Dorman, Delaware State is having getting more alumni back involved in Newcastle County. Keith, if you call, because you didn't give me the dates. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Hello?
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 Okay, I got to turn the TV off.
No, go ahead. Speak.
Yeah, I was calling, and I was wondering if the history thing that he's doing or whatever, how you could get that out to more young black kids in the schools, because I'm a Jones and I don't know nobody past my grandma.
That's a very good question. How can you get this information out to more of the schools? Thank you, buddy.
It's tough. It's tough to get into the schools. I mean, there are all kinds of security. I mean,
Plus they don't want you.
plus
That's
they
probably.
don't.
That's
they
probably.
don't want me.
I think you could come and see his presentation and get with Mr. Wolford, and he could get you some information. Come over to my office. You can do it in my office.
I went to Shoe Medill last year to help them put together their Black History Month celebration. And what we did was take a couple of folks from the community, from the local community, and we had a skit. The kids did a skit of, what they did in their lives. The problem with that, I had to be there 7 different times and had to do 3 different presentations.
They make it hard for you. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yes, I have a question for the speaker. Yeah, I just want to know if he knows anything about the Dover 8 and if he might be related to anyone there.
How are you doing this evening, darling? Good to hear from you, as usual. I'm not sure I'm blood related to any of them or not. I have the last name. 2 of them had the last name.
But I never heard of the Dover 8, so I think that's important. I mean, really, seriously. So I could just Google and look up the Dover 8.
Again, it's an incredible story.
Thank you, ma'am.
Again, Harry Tubman, as we know, made 16 trips to Dorchester County to free her folks, as well as to free other blacks in the Dorchester, Cambridge, Maryland area.
How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Listen, I'm a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher at Prestige Academy. I'm the former dean of students. We need to get this brother into our school. That's no problem. Anytime that you want to come in, our boys would love to hear it. Our parents would love to hear the message. But I just need to know the email again. I didn't get it.
Let me give you the email address, SYL. WLF at AOL.com. And I'm glad to come over.
Hey.
Thank you.
Did you get it? And you know, my friend, I was talking about his son goes to Prestige Academy. So Wayne, your son's going to get some history and you're not. Thank you.
All right now.
Yeah, I mean, but I think and I think that, people were calling and the phone was messed up. But that's fascinating information. And I think the guy had a good point that we need to try to get this stuff in schools and some of the community centers.
Again, have
you ever been invited to do a presentation at Delaware State University? Somewhere like that.
For some reason, no. But let me go back to Shoe Medill, because it was educational for me. Shoe Medill is a middle school, 5th, 6th, 7th graders, and they really got me involved over there. I was involved in grading the essay contest. They had an essay contest on why do we have Black History Month. And everybody had to get up and write an essay on why we have Black History Month. Everybody knew the names, Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, but there was no depth to their understanding. And somehow the depth we know Harriet Tubman was a great person, but why? We know Malcolm X was great, but why? And so a lot of work.
So you need to get into the depth.
There's a lot of work to be done.
I mean, I'm telling you, I was reading about, some stuff on George Washington Carver the other day. I mean, this guy was deep. How you doing? Welcome to the show. Turn your TV down.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we're saying hello, but you got an echo.
Right, okay.
See what's...
I wonder if Mr. Wolford is familiar with the book that's written by Carl C. Marx.
We can't even really hear you because your phone is up and it's an echo.
All right, let me change it. All right, now can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the book about?
I wonder if Mr. Wolford was familiar with the history of the African Americans of Delaware and Maryland's Eastern Shore.
I have seen that online. Yes. Written by Dr. Newton.
Yes, that's a very interesting book. It gives you a brief history.
Okay, thank you for the call. Thank you, buddy. We'll take one last call. One quick call. How you doing? We're getting off the air. How you doing?
Hello, how you doing? This is Diggin' William, 199. I called to tell you. Congratulations from last Sunday night. You had that lady on there. And congratulations for the gentleman you got on now. God bless y'all. Keep doing a good job.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you, Mr. How much time we got? Thank you, Mr. Wolford. As always, we got to get you on more often. And I think that with the presentations, because I think a lot of people be having questions.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I mean, like me, I'm going to go trying to find out the Dover 8. Because
Sure.
And you and I talk a lot, but this is the first time I've really heard about that. And I think that's the problem. You know, we put a book in front of us, we won't read it, and we don't get the history.
There's some incredible stories out there. Again, I am over at the University of Delaware looking at digitized versions of The Liberator, which was an abolitionist newspaper, as well as Frederick.
You'll come back on, though, right?
I'll be back on.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've been enjoying our shows. This is good. And next week, Alvin and I went out and we interviewed Mr. James Gilliam Sr., 93 years old. Had a lot of good stuff. I hope you watch next week. And also, like I said, I want to tell the mayor and folks in this organization, check out William Hicks Anderson. I'm telling you, warning signs. Also, I will be giving out turkeys to all the senior centers. I will be working with the Jefferson Council. We're going to have a great time. All the politicians, we're going to cut out a whole bunch of other stuff, you know, because I got to go back to the basics. And I don't really mean to be mean-spirited, because we are going to help a lot of people out, but it's going to be seniors. Wow, that was a lot. Sean, go over to Hicks Anderson, get it straight, bro. You're going to have a revolution going on over there. March. Thanks, Si. You the best, man. You are the best, man.
Okay.
Thank you, man.